Do you feel like your devices understand you? Do you feel like your apps respect you? I'm Benjamin and this is Redesign, a series of letters to big tech and little tech, looking at how design and technology regularly fills us with existential dread and fear instead of wonder and hope, and how we might be able to fix it. I'm going to assume that if you're watching this, you've experienced the mindless scrolling, the endless, pointless, meaningless consumption of content with no intention behind it. I personally go through phases with my relationship to content, from scrolling as a habit with certain triggers like finishing a big task, to just one more video, where this is the default and literally anything else in life is a struggle to get to. It's devastating and controlling, and no matter how many times I quit, I always end up in the same cycle. It's a toxic relationship. But I'm not the only one. Mindless scrolling is an epidemic, and the ways to address it effectively are few and far between. But at least there is a conversation around it. So after one of my hour-long binges, I told myself that's it, and then I made the grave mistake of searching for a cure. There's hundreds, maybe thousands of videos on the effects of mindless scrolling on your brain. Neurobiology, psychology, even social critiques. Stuck in between them are the so-called cures. How to get off social media, how to stop scrolling. The content widely pours into one of two camps. Some people argue it's an addiction, a state of psychological or physical dependence on some substance or behavior. They say it should be handled as such by going cold turkey and abandoning our friends that we lost to the algorithm. Then there's the other gang that have developed ways to address it more like a habit. A habit is a well-learned behavior that over time is performed with little or no conscious intent. This side focuses on moderation instead of advocating for everyone to move to the wilderness into some sustainable Teletubby set. The reason this divide between an all or nothing versus a management approach exists is that social media is great. As much as it's detrimental to my well-being and so many others, it's also created some of the most empathetic communities and trends that actually bring back that hope and connection that non-social or traditional media takes away. So the point is social media good, but social media bad. Centrism. The thing is, these platforms are designed to be addictive and keep us on. If it's free, then you're the product, ads, etc. The careful curation of echo chambers versus moral and social challenges to test but also comfort you. The bait and switch of boring content to strikingly high quality content that hits your primordial brain with that sweet foraged berry dopamine. The emotional rollercoaster that leaves you fatigued and abused are all part of it. And even though there's little features they introduce solely to help it, it's not really a solution. TikTok and YouTube and Apple have timers and reminders on how much you use the apps. TikTok feels like it actually tries with that one video that pops up if you're on there too long, but it shows up after an hour sometimes. These methods are designed as countermeasures to the algorithm, and so are so many other systems, things like lockouts, feed emptiers, visual cues to show how far you've scrolled. They won't work in harmony because they're not designed to. All these interventions work in an adversarial model of interaction. Me, the user, versus them, the algorithm. The algorithm is portrayed like a virus, and dopamine detoxes and interventions are like vaccines or medicine to ease the symptoms. Mindless scrolling is like being under siege by the algorithm, hitting us with the superior firepower of trebuchets versus our inferior mud walls of motivation and intention. But there is more to this. These metaphors express how the relationship makes us feel. But it also shows our attitude towards the platforms. The idea that we are under attack takes away our agency and makes the relationship feel like it's our fault that it's not working, even if vocally we blame them. But in any relationship, we expect respect and compromise. What if there was a way to make ourselves accounted for and, on an individual user level, hold the system accountable? Negotiation and compromise, trust and fairness. The way the algorithm works today is through engagement data. Hundreds of data points describing how long you spend on content, whether you interact with it, are liking it, commenting it, sharing it, and all that information is combined with all the content's information to produce some next content that you'll hopefully watch, and so on and so on. The idea being that you get personalized content that you'll love, because it was prepared for you. But there's the issue of what that means. The goal is to give you the content that you're interested in, but it doesn't necessarily see that information. How do you measure interest or enjoyment? Especially if you're just scrolling mindlessly and all the data just says watched, you end up being fed content that you'll watch, not content that you want. But to the system, that looks pretty much the same. Engagement data is naturally a flawed estimation of where you are, and how you feel. You can keep adding more and more data, but how I am isn't always objective or observable. People can act differently than how they feel, or worse, enter habitual patterns where their intentions and emotions are ignored. It just happens. That's what leads to mindless scrolling. Real needs, real subjectivity are ignored. So what can we do? There's a bunch of methods out there to handle habits. Lockouts, timers, stats, feed emptiers. And you know there's a serious problem about it when there are funded startups working on this. But again, these are countermeasures. What would a mutually beneficial, respectful platform look like? Just cut the algorithms? Of course not. That's where the value lies. The exploration, the relevance, the learnings. The issue lies in the fact that they work on assumptions made about us. Do we enjoy it? Are we okay? Are we really watching it? So what if we had a way to reflect on these? What if we had an explicit say in what we wanted or how we were? What if there was some dialogue? In a very simplified sense, the platforms spawn an algorithm for each of us, then this algorithm watches us and tweaks itself automatically, taking notes about everything we do, basically experimenting on us. I believe there's an option to treat the user more like a person. Instead of relying solely on observation, the algorithm could be negotiated between the platform and the user. Say if you've been scrolling mindlessly, TikTok throws up a little mini questionnaire. How are you feeling? What's on your mind? Are you paying attention? How's your energy? Then the algorithm could adjust accordingly to not just some semi-objective truth, but our subjective truth, and what might be different, our desires and needs. Going further, the algorithm could make finite playlists in negotiated cycles, so that generating a new one requires some intentional user input, whilst perhaps allowing for more open discovery the first time you open the app. I call this the consensual algorithm, and I'm well aware there'd be a lot of complexity. But the data is pretty much all there, so it's just about making sure we're represented truthfully. I see another way forward, but I'm not a huge fan. I don't want to fight the products I use. I enjoy them, they're great, and they've made me who I am. But if that's one-sided, then it's not going to work. Fighting back already seems weird and pretty cliche to say out loud. But I had this idea a while back and I'd like to share it with you and the platforms. When ChatGPT popped off last year, Twitter was flooded with web apps and startups capitalizing on its profoundly insane abilities. And as the internet goes, it spawned memes. In particular, one stayed with me. The promise of an AI assistant that would write all your emails and articles from short notes was met with a solution. An AI assistant that read all their emails and articles and summarized them. A duel of fluffing and defluffing information. More importantly, the latter is an AI that works for your intentions, your counter algorithm. Unless the platforms do something, I wouldn't be surprised if the future held everyday Pokemon battles between algorithms. Our fighter filters out all the content that is not high enough quality or in line with our needs and intentions. I know this all seems idealistic. They'd never implement it. It hurts the shareholders. It's not in their interests. Believe me, if I had the capacity to build these ideas, I would. But at the end of the day, we do kind of have a say. There's only one question that matters here. Would you use a platform that understands and respects you, or one that leaves you feeling empty, anxious, and quite frankly helpless? I made this video because I feel like the conversation is blaming users for this mess, instead of advocating for a solution with the platforms. The thing is with big corporations that they copy what works and what threatens them. If something like this does threaten them, they will make a move. So have an opinion, have an expectation. Remember that they know they could do better, but they don't. The products are all made by people, so I'd love to think we can hold them responsible for what they've created. Now, I'm aware the solutions aren't perfect. The consensual algorithm would require immense costs and computation to get it right, and what's to stop creators figuring it out and exploiting how this works? But it would make us feel respected, or at least not that exploited. The counter algorithm is also not perfect. It could create an even worse echo chamber effect if it's all up to us. It could protect us from the news and leave us with homogeneous, empty content. But at least we'd feel in control. Whether it's naive or not, I'd like to believe that this content is fundamentally positive. But it's difficult to keep defending them. So for now, I offer a few ways to get closer to this world without quitting social media. Step 1. Cull your followed accounts. Remove everyone you don't watch anymore, everyone that you don't want to watch anymore, ones that you feel are eating up your time. Step 2. Stick to your following page. If you're feeling mindless or just looking to waste time, make sure the content you have access to is finite. Resist the suggestions unless you're ready to go down that rabbit hole. Step 3. Curate, for yourself and for others. Share the good content in playlists with friends, colleagues, peers. Become the algorithm. Keep them in mind when you're scrolling. How'd this make you feel? Was it interesting? Trade the work that you've put into evaluating good content with others. If you can't trust the algorithm has your best intentions in mind, do it yourself.